So things are a little different tonight. So thank you all for your patience, and just bear with us as we try to explain what's going on. So about 4:30 or so, there was a traffic accident on Woodrow at Chronicle, and a driver who apparently is okay hit a transformer and knocked power lines down. So part of downtown is totally without power. And apparently across the railroad tracks they have power. So we're a block or so on the wrong side of the tracks. So because having a meeting with no power is not conducive to what we need to do, we could open the meeting tonight and then ask for council to vote to recess the meeting and move it to the police department at 7:30. So we'll go over the consent agenda items here, and then we'll close out the work session. We'll open the council meeting, and then ask the council to vote to recess it to 7:30 at the police department. So I apologize for the inconvenience, but we'll need to just pick up if you're interested in going over there with us. We've got seating in the training room of the police department, so we'll help you find the right room. But we can do all the business there except for what is item 4 and 5 on the regular agenda, which is a public hearing on a rezoning request.
Right.
And it's because the general statutes require that rezonings have a public notice for a specific time, date, and place. So we had that notice go out for tonight at 7 o'clock here at City Hall. So we can't hold a public hearing in a different location from where we advertised it. So we will have that public hearing for the rezoning request for the Morris at Belmont at our May 6th meeting. So it'll be at our regular meeting in May instead of April. So if you're here for that only, you're welcome to leave, or we'd obviously love for you to stay for the whole thing. But we can go to the police department and we can have everything else except for that rezoning public hearing, because that's the only thing that requires a public hearing. So any questions from the council? And I'm sorry, I texted this to you, and it was sort of late notice, so I hope you got that message. So things are a little bit different tonight. And also, Councilman Gadd is away on business, and was going to try to call in tonight, but was not able to make that work out with us.
If I get better, he's here.
Yes, so hopefully he'll be here with us on May the 6th. So I will go over the items on the consent agenda, and then once we're finished with that, the mayor, if you'll open the meeting, and then we'll vote to recess at 7:30 at the police department. So the first 5 items on the consent agenda are all minutes from meetings that we had in March. The regular meeting on March the 4th, and then closed session meetings. And Jamie's going to print those all for you and hand them to you at the police station. We had a closed session at the end of the March 4th meeting. We had a special meeting on March the 8th. That's the meeting we met with Senator Harrington and Representative Corbett and Representative Baumgartner to talk about transportation and utility issues. So those minutes are included in your packet. Item 4 is a special meeting on March the 11th. And then item 5 is a closed session that we had at the end of that March 11th meeting. I believe that was our special meeting workshop. Item 6 is approval of street closure ordinance for the Friday Night Live concert series for this year. That's part of our DOT rules for closing the streets. So those dates are included in your packet. Item 7 on the consent agenda is a similar street closing request for the July 4th event, our Red, White, and Belmont Festival concert, closing Main Street for that. Item 8 is a follow-up action from last month, and it is to accept the certificate of sufficiency and to schedule a public hearing on the annexation request for the Garrison properties that would be subject to the rezoning hearing. Annexation is a 3-month process, a 3-step process. This is the middle part. So you've got the sufficiency statement in your packet, and then we would set that public hearing at the May 6th council meeting. Item 9 on the consent agenda is an item that we discussed at your planning retreat this year, and that would be adoption of or approval of a resolution creating the Belmont Historic Preservation Advisory Board. So we've had a lot of discussion about historic preservation and the Historic Preservation Commission versus the Landmarks Commission, and you asked us to come back with an advisory board that would help property owners that live in properties on the National Register district, if they're interested interested in becoming a historic landmark through Gaston County Historic Preservation Commission. This group would help them through that process, but also help educate people on historic properties and promote the value of historic preservation. So this would create that board, 5-member board, and we would begin advertising for membership.
And
Sir?
just to be clear, they would have no legislative authority?
They do not have any regulatory authority at all. That's correct. They would just advise you on issues regarding historic preservation. And then it's not on this agenda, but as a subsequent action to that, we would also, the planning staff is working on a text amendment to remove the historic preservation overlay and the Historic Preservation Commission from the Land Development Code. And that will go to the Planning and Zoning Board this month and then come to you for approval or for consideration at the May 6th meeting as well. And that would be the regulatory part of it. Item 10 is an item that came to the Water and Sewer Committee last month, and it is approval of amendments to our Land Development Standards Manual regarding utility trench testing requirements, and also clarifying the discussion of impact fees versus system development fees. And there's one other item.
Yeah, the bar grade.
Yes. Changing our requirements to remove the influent bar grade at neighborhood pump stations and instead have a mechanically clean screens with equipment such as a muffin monster at all of our pump stations. And I'll ask Jerry to get into some more detail about the requirements for the compaction testing for our utility trenches. Just go over that briefly with the council.
Basically, we've just found that in recent times the contractors aren't as diligent as they used to be about compaction in their trenches, and so we have taken a standard which I borrowed from a bigger municipality, which requires them to, one, hire a geotechnical firm to do testing, actual testing on trench compaction, and then two, specifies how much, what the level of testing has to be. So it's the same spec that we put in our city specs when we have a city job, sewer job, etc. And it's just formalizing it. It's been hit and miss. Some of the good developers and contractors automatically do this, and they never even consider it. Not something you have to do, but we are getting a bunch of contractors that are less experienced at it, and in recent times we've become somewhat concerned about it. So we thought, let's formalize it. That gives us something that our inspectors can go out there and say, hey, where's the testing? Stop what you're doing until you get it done.
Makes it easier for people to understand.
Yes. As far as the bar grates, at our pump stations, we have manually clean bar grates that are there to filter out the big stuff that gets flushed down toilets, paper products primarily. At all the newer pump stations, particularly down in McLean, we have a piece of mechanical apparatus, which they call it a muffin monster, but it's a grinder that the flow goes through it and it grinds it up and gets rid of it. Doesn't require a man to be out there trying to rake a screen in a deep hole, and is much more effective. So that's why we want to change that policy.
The Water and Sewer Committee unanimously recommended approval of those changes to the land development standards.
Jerry's Palm Court up in North Belmont and Stowe Road, are those examples of what you're talking about, the soil compaction?
I can't tell you. Stowe Road, that pipe was put in 10 years ago,
Okay.
and that was a city job, but I don't know if it's the weather conditions or if there's some problem underneath. I mean, I'm going to recommend to David that we get out there and have somebody take some core sampling, just so we know what we're doing before we just add more asphalt over those. And Palm Lane up there is more recent, but it's about 4 or 5 years, and it's not quite as bad, and there's considerably less traffic up there. So it's not as noticeable. I don't get a lot of complaints. I've got that intentionally. But this is meant to avoid that. Get it right the first time, and then you don't have a problem.
Any other questions for Jerry on this? The final item on the consent agenda is another street closing for an event. This would be on May the 11th for the open water Catawba race. And these are sections of streets, mainly one lane on the streets, primarily in the eastern part of town by the river.
And it'll be swimming and running.
My understanding is it'll be part in the water and part running on the streets. So that's all we have for the consent agenda. Do you have any questions about those items? Then, Mr. Mayor, if we can then come out of the work session and open the regular meeting, then of course we'll entertain a motion to recess the meeting to the police department at 7:30.
You want to do our recognition here, or you want to wait until we get down, in case they need to leave? What do you think, Parks?
You could probably do either way, but, I mean, it's a part of the regular meeting.
Any of you all want to go down to the police department, or you want to do it recognition here?
We can do it at the police department, that's fine.
Okay, well, when we go down there, that's good. Okay, very good.
Okay, so we'll close the work
Let's
session.
open the meeting.
Open the meeting.
Let's close the work
Open the
session.
meeting.
Let's open the meeting. All right, make a motion to open the meeting.
Well, you just
You just call, you just got me.
Just count.
Close the meeting.
No, to recess this to the police department at 7:30.
Recess, then open at the police department.
At 7:30.
That's second that. Sounds good enough.
Turner,
All right, very good.
I'll second it.
It's been
Second, all in
seconded.
favor, say aye. Aye, okay. Let's go down to the police station.
We'll reconvene at the police department at 7:30.
Oh, goody.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion and allow us to grow closer as a community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that affect the citizens of our city. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Well, as a pleasant evening, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We got some special presentations to make, recognition. Today is the 20th anniversary of Daniel Stowe Botanical Gardens. Hard to believe it's been that long. Hard to believe, isn't it, David? Huh? Unbelievable. So Jim Hoffman and Patrick Larkin, come on up here. We want to congratulate you on the 20 years. Patrick, you've been here a couple of years. You were in Nashville, Tennessee before you came here. And Jim, you've been involved for a long time over there. We served on the board together too. So.
We did serve on the board together.
So, but 20 years is a long, long time for the Daniel Stowe Botanical Gardens. And they've done so much to improve the garden from where it first started out. It's tremendous what we have. And if you want to just kind of mention the site, all the things that we have going on at the garden, the different things that we have, that are tremendous.
And Jim has some things that he'll hand out here. And let me get so that I don't have my back to the Kennedy Council. Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman, for welcoming us here tonight and giving me this opportunity. It's a tremendous gift that Daniel Stowe gave to the community 20 years ago. And before I talk about plans that we have coming up for this next year, I wanted to just give you some highlights of this past year. So our fiscal year actually ended yesterday, and we welcomed more than 1,300 people through our gates yesterday, and about half as many dogs. It was our Pups and Perennials event, one of the few times in the year that we allow dogs into the garden. And it was a great event to sort of cap off our year. Our theme this past year had the theme of pollinators. We hosted 2 events in 2018 and put the focus on the importance of pollinators in our daily lives. Over the summer, about 12,000 people visited the Butterfly Bungalow, a 2,100 square foot seasonal butterfly house that hosted thousands of North Carolina native butterflies, along with a host of nectar plants that allow them to thrive. Guests could see up close all the stages of a butterfly's life cycle and the incredible process of metamorphosis as butterflies emerged from their chrysalids. We had a case set up where several times a day butterflies were emerging, which is a pretty exciting event for kids and for their parents as well. A number of Belmont's designers and businesses, including AR Workshop, Craig McClausland, who's a local graphic designer, and Zoe Ranucci, who's a Belmont artist, also helped us in creating pollinator putting. It was a full 18 holes of miniature golf that provided family fun and delivering specific messages about the importance of pollinators. And I think a number of you were actually out there putting when the Montcross Chamber of Commerce had a event out there. But 2018 also marked the largest expansion of our holiday lights display since the event began 14 years ago. Holidays at the Garden doubled in size to 1 mile of a million lights. And that ran through our newly restored prairie and into the perennial garden. And then we also had the topiaries that were coordinated with music and everything out there. So I hope everyone got a chance to get out there. We welcomed nearly 30,000 people during holiday this year. Other highlights of the fiscal year included a total of attendance of nearly 105,000 people. 35% of our guests came from more than 50 miles away, which meant that it was also likely that they ate in local restaurants or stayed at the Hampton Inn. We had visitors from all 50 states last year. We served more than 9,000 people through our school and continuing education programs. We started a scholarship program for Title I schools that served nearly 400 children through that program. We had 133 weddings, corporate events, and other celebrations. And in addition to our Pups and Perennials event, we conducted a host of other events, including our inaugural El Dia de los Muertos event and a successful plant sale and many more. And one of the most important things was that we opened up our beer garden this year. Nobody enjoyed that. Okay, no. We had 45 member households at the end of the year and 165 active volunteers. And in 2018, we collected nearly $80,000 in state tax revenue, some of which comes back directly to the county. Now, that sounds like a lot for 2018. Just look forward to 2019. We're incredibly excited about Grandiflora Gamrat Class of the Garden, which will be on display from May 24th through September 29th. It's an exhibit of hundreds of individual pieces of glass that make up dozens of installations that will be throughout the garden. The individual orchids, the glass will be about this big on them, so it's really going to be quite a display throughout the garden. We'll also, in June, have the grand opening of our Piedmont Prairie Garden. And last fall, we planted thousands of plugs on nearly 1.5 acres to restore that site to the grasslands that once actually covered this entire area. And not only is the garden turning 20 this year, but it's also the 5th anniversary of the opening of the Lost Hollow, the Kimbrell Children's Garden. It turns 5 this year.
Wow.
So we'll celebrate with a visit from the Charlotte Symphony Guild's Musical Petting Zoo and have some other events. And we'll most likely have cake, so be sure to come out for that. And then to cap off the year, we will host North Carolina artist Patrick Doherty for 3 weeks as he and the community builds one of his stickwork installations out on the site. So thank you again for declaring June Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden Month and for all of the support that you have shown the garden over its 20 years. And we look forward to seeing you in the garden soon.
Thank you, Patrick. Very good. Thank you very much. With that, we're going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Got a motion?
I'll second it.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Public comment. Have a lot of people signed up for public comment. When you come up to make your comment, don't duplicate it if you don't have to, but If you come up, you have 3 minutes to speak. Say your name and your address when it's time to come up. So, first one we have on the list is Jenna Smith.
Can my husband speak for me?
Sure. That's Charlie Smith.
Do I need to take a stand?
Yeah, you can if you want to, yeah.
My name is Charlie Smith. I live at 2606 Boundary Street in Belmont. And what this is all about is I'm in the process of building a 24 by 24 carport beside my house. And I'm not from around here, I'm from another place, so I did not know that I was breaking any rules or laws in it, but I was stopped in the process of 80% of it is complete. I've got $3,000 worth of material that I've already got in this structure. And I was told that I needed to go through zoning, and as I went through zoning, I was told that I could not build it. He was trying to enforce the new subdivision laws and rules on the old subdivision, and he explained to me that it wasn't working out too good, but he was going to hold it the best that he could, and I was told to take it down. And I'm here to speak on it to try to keep my structure. He kept saying I could build it in the backyard. It's not feasible to build in the backyard. I'm building over the existing driveway that I already have. There's no way to put it on the other side of the house because I don't have enough property on the other side of the house. The driveway doesn't go in the backyard, so I'm stuck with $3,000 worth of material that I've either got to take down or try to save. And that's what I'm here tonight to do, to try to save so I can build my carport for me and my wife.
Is that Boundary Street, is that in the city limits of Belmont? Or is that North Belmont?
It's in the
Is
city,
that in the outskirts? It is in the city. It is.
on this side. And half of it's in the county, the other half's in the city.
That's what I thought, yeah. Okay. But his part's in the city.
Yes, sir.
So we're really kind of hogtied when it comes to a decision like that, because that's the codes, you know.
Would that go to the Board of Adjustments?
Well, let me add this too. I rode around my neighborhood, and I took a few pictures with my phone or whatever. Like 80% of the people in there have exactly what I'm trying to do already. And we had a freestanding carport that we had taken out to build a bigger one, because me and her just got married, and when it was just her by herself, that carport worked fine. Now that I live there and I have a new truck and everything, I was just trying to make it bigger so me and her both could get in there. I have to actually park across the street, and I can't park in front of the house because there's no parking.
Right.
And I've done got one ticket for that, and didn't know that rule either, but I got that one and paid that. So just trying to add to our neighborhood, make it look better. Everything I've done has been, spot on. I've had people come from the east side, west side, all come over and look and see what I've done and how I've done it. Everybody said how good it's going to look, and can't wait till I get done with it and all of this stuff. So just trying to save it.
Understand that. I'm really kind of between a rock and a hard place on that, David. Is there any recourse he has to go into the adjustments to?
Mayor, I would defer that to Shelley or Alex. They can answer that question.
What do you think, Shelley?
Yes, Mayor. If you'd like to come back in, we can sit down and go over options such as the Board of Adjustment and see if a variance is a route you can try to go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next we have up to speak is Joe Stowe.
Joe Stowe, 210 South Central Belmont. Last time I was here, I represent the ABC store in Belmont, and we have a nice disbursement to give out. We don't have one tonight, but I do have a favor we're going to ask for, so I'll explain it to you. But we've just gone through our first quarter, and we feel confident that the figures that we projected and that we had are going to be good. We're looking at the figures for the rest of this year. We feel good about that. So we're asking the city council to give us permission to pay the rent expense beginning at our fiscal year, which is July. We'll take over the payments for that for the last 6 months of this year. Save you guys a little money. We'll be free and easy, ready to go.
That'd be great, yeah.
And normally we do not comment on public comment, but this group deserves a commendation. The audience does not necessarily realize what an arduous process this has been. When the voters approved an ABC store, you're asking a volunteer board to start a business, make it operational, make it profitable. So when you're doing that, we had the people from Raleigh who said that's not a good idea. We had 2 municipalities who wanted to do it for us and give us 30% of the profit. So we thought maybe that was not the best idea. So we were lucky to have a volunteer board as excellent as these people were. And it was not a unanimous verdict, but the majority of the council said, we will help you until you get this set up because we want a first-class operation. So I want to publicly thank this group, and I hope we'll do a formal commendation at some point because it is a big effort. They don't get paid any money. We're getting the benefit of it and will continue to. One other piece of this, most of us did not realize the majority, well not the majority, but a chunk of the money that comes into the ABC store is from the restaurants. So all of our restaurants who are buying alcohol until we set up our ABC store, that money was going to those other municipalities who wanted to take this responsibility for us. So thank you and thank the group, and please relay our thanks to them for all their efforts.
And I think they deserve a big hand too for the job they've done.
You guys done,
Can I ask you a question?
sure.
How many months did we pay rent for? You know?
I would say about 14 so far. You started paying rent in January of 2018.
What was the rent amount?
$10,000 a month.
It's about $140,000.
Correct. And then you're giving you a check for $36,000.
And giving us a check for $36,000.
Wow.
And so
That's terrific.
a year and a half to 2 years total year time will probably break even. And then pure
That's
profit.
what we're shooting for.
That's good. That's awesome. The math worked.
Well, look what we're doing here. We're providing something that's going to be here for a long time. And the first thing it does is provide a service for the citizens, whether you drink or not, it's there. The second thing is provide service for the restaurants that are here. There are 16 restaurants here that we serve. They have to buy from us by law. So we have to be set up, we have to take care of it. And the third thing is, once we start disbursements, there's no stopping. Those disbursements will come to the city and to the police department as long as that store is there. So you're going to get the money back a lot quicker than most people think they are. We were audited by the ABC group in Raleigh, which they're pretty tight to work with, and it's a whole new experience. But anyway, they told us that most people who start a store like this don't make a profit for 5 years. And they said, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work and the efforts of all the crew that you have over there too. Next we have signed up John Bailey from the Morris Project. Hey, Bill.
Thank you, guys.
I don't see him there.
Is she not here? Okay. He might have got lost trying to find the police station. All right, next we have Teddy Daniels from Belmont. State your name and address. You got 3 minutes.
I actually have a handout for everyone up here. I have 8, so everyone up here can, even you. Teddy Daniels, 281 Mellon Road, Belmont. And I'd like to talk about our school overcrowding. And these are some numbers that I received from Todd Higgins just a few days ago. And this pertains to the apartments, so 325 apartments. And I would like to request that you deny this rezoning request for the reason that our schools are already overcrowded. My son has been in school here since birth, and already they've had trailers to learn in grade school, elementary school. They lost their computer lab. They have classes in the hallways. Art class was in a hallway. Music class was behind the curtain on the gym. And as you can see, our schools are between 97.2 and 118.1% overpopulated right now, which is a shame. And I feel that our quality of life for our children needs to be important, and we need to value that. And as a council, I'm hopeful that you're going to prioritize voting to reflect the quality of life of your constituents over the pocketbooks of these developers. This rezoning request does not need to be approved. They are asking for migrating from a three-story to a 4-story, so they are asking to have that current zoning changed. And that is not something that you as a board need to do. And I hope that you will look at this and just realize what an astronomical effect 325 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartments could have on top of the 188 houses, the developments behind Harris Teeter, the development by down, South Point and New Hope and everywhere. But 95% of these new developments are going to feed into these 4 schools. So I'm here to ask you to deny this rezoning request for this reason. And I sincerely hope that you will look at these numbers and take a hard look at, especially 118.1%. That is not in the best interest of your constituents.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, next person we have speak is Janet Rhodes. And John Rhodes, and if you're going to say the same thing, one of you wants to take over, that'd be fine. Janet and John Rhodes here.
I know her, and I think she said she's gonna come back for your next meeting in May.
Okay. All right, Russell Branch. Is Russell Branch here? Okay. Brian Golden's here, I know that much.
Oh, good evening.
State your name and address, and you got 3 minutes, Brian.
Yes, sir. Hi, my name is Brian Dalton. I happily live at 605 Gaston Avenue, and it's a dead-end street. Lord, it is so glorious. There's 2 people that use the end of my street other than myself. But what I'm here to speak about again, I think I spoke 2 years ago. Please consider putting in your budget proposal some funding for roads and roads improvements, because what I have learned is supposedly it helps all your projects score better in the state scoring system. And that was what 2-3 years ago they started a new scoring system, and everyone was confused, but they didn't know how to make the roads score better. And I have been told that a little bit of funding from the local municipality help all projects score better in the state system. And that's it.
Thank you, Brian. Next we have signed up to speak Elizabeth Hill. Good evening.
I'm Elizabeth Hairston Hill. My address is 5523 Washington Street in Belmont. I am the daughter of Zeta Stowe Hairston, and I am here with several of my family members to thank the city of Belmont for issuing a proclamation of March 17th, her 100th birthday, as Zeta Stowe Hairston Day. We regret that we weren't able to be here to see the proclamation, but we wanted to be sure to come and thank you for that, and it made such a difference for Mama. We are just so grateful to have her with us these 100 years, and we want to thank you for joining us in that celebration of her life. You all were in good company at this event. We also had the Gaston County Board of Commissioners sent a commendation. The city of Williamson, West Virginia, which is where Mama lives and we grew up, and I asked my family members to stand. Let's see, my sister Nancy, my brother Albert, who's also here at Belmont, his wife Linda, my husband Ronnie, and my cousin Doris Stowe, and my sister Cynthia, who's holding the phone, and my cousin Zip Stowe.
He's out in the hall.
Zip's out there, yeah. Come on, Zip.
He's our cousin, and he was here to receive on our behalf the last time. Belmont was in great company, but Belmont was at the top of the list, ahead of Gaston County, the city of Williamson, the West Virginia governor, former and current governor, senators, congressmen. We are just grateful. Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, which is Mama's home church, and for those in my family, most of us here in Belmont. It is also our home church now. So they also issued a proclamation for Zeta Stowe Harrison Day on March 17th. And Henry's Chapel, A.M.E. Zion, also sent a greeting to us. The city of Belmont was well recognized. One of the things that we said to you is that it would bring Mama great joy to hear the name Belmont, her hometown mentioned, and it did. It brought a smile and great joy to her heart, and we want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I'm just glad you told you hadn't gone to Garibaldi, the original name.
We brought that for you, a program.
Terrific.
A copy of the guest.
That is fantastic. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, next we have signed up to speak Neil Brock. Hey, Neil.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. A little different quarters.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope whoever did that accident, I hope they're okay. I just seen it come. That's horrible.
Yeah.
But I came here tonight to talk about something that was mentioned in the last council meeting. That's the kiosks. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the idea of promoting the town is a wonderful thing. And I see the point of putting the kiosk in so people can see what's going on, where to go, is a great idea. I'm just not so sure that the kiosk is the right delivery method. And here's why I say that. How many people doesn't own one of these? Called a smartphone. You can find anything on Google, unfortunately. So I think that technology is going to compete with this. You can find just about anything downtown or anywhere on a Google map. And within seconds, I can find the new restaurant in town, I can find the park, I can find the park's office, I can find City Hall on Google. Now, the thing of it is, on that kiosk, and I just took this picture, there's a handout if you want to, and I'm sorry about the picture, I took this on my cell phone. You can pass that out. This is at Sam's Club right now, up here in Gastonia. That kiosk is right there. It's a bad picture, I understand that, but the sign on it says this kiosk is being removed soon. The world's largest retailer, Sam's Club, Walmart, is taking it out. There's got to be a reason why they're taking it out. It must not be working for them. Now, I understand, the idea of this thing is to promote the town. God knows we want to do that. It's a wonderful idea, but here's what I think we should do in return. Since we're going to provide funding for it and a lot of money, and these things are quite expensive, they're like $50,000 a piece. First of all, the kiosk is a stationary, bolted down item. It's there subject to 4 seasons a year: fall, winter, snow, ice, and rain. And are you going to stand there in front of that kiosk when it's pouring down rain to use it? Probably not. You're probably going to sit in your car and go, found it. Another thing is, Mr. Eisenhower may have to deal with some probability of vandalism going in the future. I mean, we don't want that. It's a probability of fact of life that people do vandalize things in the city. Now, I said that to say this. Technology is ever changing. You guys know that because you're competing with this kind of technology. Why don't we do this? Let's promote the town. Build an app. I have my own personal app for my office. With an app, I can share it with everybody in this room. You can share it with your friends and family. You can share it with the city. You can say, here's what's going on in Belmont. Here's the next event. Here's how to find us. Here's who your city council is. And I talked with Phil, I think, Friday night, wasn't it? We kind of mentioned this, but I think it's a wonderful idea. I just don't think that the kiosk is the right delivery method. I think there's another way to use technology in a more advanced way. And through an app, you can share it with everybody, but all over the world, this thing can travel within seconds. That kiosk can't. I'm just saying, maybe there's a better way of a delivery method to use technology to do what we're trying to do. God knows that's to promote the town in a very positive way.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. Appreciate that. All right. That concludes our public comment. That brings us to item number 2, the presentation of the Amberley request to modify a previously approved single-family residential neighborhood. Shelley?
Thank you. Mayor and council, as read into the record, this is Major Development Plan 2019-03. So I'm going to take a moment to talk about Major Development Plan process.
Please speak up.
Yes, okay.
We don't have the microphone in here, sorry.
So the Major Development Plan process is used when a project is proposed, the development is proposed that's consistent with the zoning and the land development code or zoning ordinances. It's triggered by a couple of different ways. In this case, it's a proposed residential subdivision of 8 lots or more. So the intent of this process is to allow the community and the city officials to view and provide input on the development. And what we found out of this process is, based on public feedback and discussions at the planning board and city council, that it often delivers a better project. We can hear what concerns are, and the developer can try to address them, and we can condition a project. So in this case, the applicant is proposing a 188-lot residential subdivision on 83 acres. And the parcel IDs are on the screen. I won't read them into the record. This is proposed to provide single-family residential units within the subdivision. It has open space, tree save, and the required infrastructure. Now, this is actually a modification of an approved major development plan that was approved for 164 single-family lots. The subject property is located on the north side of Nixon Road. That is located west of South Point High School. This aerial photograph shows all 4 parcels. As you can see, it actually crosses the north and south side of Nixon Road. One of the subject properties, the 10-acre lot, is developed with this older farmhouse that has been boarded up for some time now, a couple of years. So this project was originally approved in 2017, and that was a conditional approval. It authorized a 164-lot single-family residential community, which resulted in just under 2 dwelling units per gross acre. So the developer has continued to vest his property, keep it active. He has completed the annexation. He has approved construction plans. He has obtained approvals from outside agencies such as NCDOT and the state for water and sewer permits. So where it sits is it's ready for a pre-con meeting. He needs to finish paying some system development fees, and this has to be taken care of by the end of the year. So the developer approached the city wanting to add additional lots, 24, so go from 164 to 188. This would result in an overall density of 2.26 dwelling units to the acre. Based on the original conditional approval, it was capped at 164 lots, therefore the developer was required to go back through the major development plan process. He would have to comply with current codes. As you can recall, in 2017, the city enacted its own traffic study ordinance in Chapter 16, primarily because what we were seeing on the peninsula is a lot of smaller developments that did not trigger or meet the threshold of NCDOT, so no traffic studies were being done. So by the City Council enacting Section 16.4 of the LDC, it could help capture the cumulative effects of all these smaller subdivisions. That was unanimously approved by both the Planning Board and Council. And that brings us to tonight's meeting. First, I'll show you the overall subdivision. This should look very familiar. The only thing that changed is the lot layout. The roadway network is the same. Open space, roadway cross sections. They were able to gain me 24 lots by adjusting the width of the lots. This next table, what I provided is based on the general residential zone, what the required minimums are, what was in the original approval, and then what is proposed here tonight. With regard to minimum lot width for the alley lots, they are loaded from the rear. The minimum lot width is 30 feet in width. The original approval had lots between 45 and 55 feet in width. The new proposal ranges from 40 to 50 feet in width, so they were reduced by 5 feet. With regard to what we call a street lot, that means the garage faces the street, it's front loading. The minimum lot width is 55 feet. The original approval had lots varying from 65 to 70 feet in width. The applicant is requesting to make them all meet the minimum, which is 55 feet in width. With regard to the setbacks, they have not changed. They comply with the requirements of the general residential zone. That includes the driveway length. The garage setback is still 30 feet in depth, 20% of the lot width for the side setbacks, and the rear has stayed the same. So what's changed in the plan is the lot width. Within the design, our ordinance requires 25% tree save area, which is just under 21 acres, which the plan shows that they are complying with that. In addition, they are required to plant street trees and yard trees, which will add actually another 700 trees, which we would gain back 38% of the tree canopy on the existing site. With regard to open space, they're required to have almost 8 acres, 7.85. They are providing 37, almost 38 acres in open space. The street design remains the same. They are dedicating future right-of-way on Nixon Road, which is just over a half acre in size. So the future right-of-way is planned to be a 3-lane cross-section. They are dedicating 40 foot from center line to meet that future need. Of course, all of their street design includes curb, gutter, sidewalk, street trees, street light, and there's actually a multi-use path on Nixon Road. And all of the internal streets are 50 feet in width. So, as I mentioned earlier, what has changed since the original approval, there was not a traffic impact study done because it was not required at that time. With this change adding the 24 lots, they are subject to Chapter 16 and the traffic study. As you are aware, our traffic engineering consulting firm is Kimley Horn, and Steve Blakely is here to provide the traffic study.
Okay.
I thought it was you.
Thanks, Adrian. Good evening, I'm Steve Blakely with Kimley Horn, and we prepared the traffic impact analysis of the development for the city. We'll go through, give you an overview of these slides. If you do have questions along the way, feel free to stop, or we can answer questions afterwards. Just as a couple reminders, the purpose of the development traffic impact analysis is to identify the impacts associated with the site and identify mitigation improvements to offset those impacts. Yeah, I know it's tough to see. And it's not to correct existing deficiencies of the road. So it's at a certain level that we measure prior to the development, add the site traffic, and then mitigate back to that if mitigation is needed. So it's correcting that added traffic associated with the site. For this particular development, we analyzed all 188 lots. And from this proposed plan, it of course satisfied the need for the city's ordinance to trip a traffic study. It did not satisfy NCDOT's warrant for requiring a traffic study. However, NCDOT was involved in the process in scoping as well as through the review and improvement of the site. So from a trip generation perspective, the 188 dwelling units creates, predicted to develop 1,859 daily trips, 138 in the AM peak hour, and 186 in the PM peak. Build out year is 2023. So at Planning Board, there was a question about the prior than the currently approved plan, and that's the 164 lot plan. And the question was, if your ordinance was in place at that point, would it, number one, warrant a traffic study? Would it require a traffic study? And then two, what was the likelihood of that 164 triggering the need for the same improvements that we'll talk about shortly? We answered yes from the standpoint of warranting the TIA, and from opinion, we said yes based on the recommendations, and we've checked all that. We'll get into it in a little bit, and both of those warrant these improvements. So that was just a little more from the planning board. So from a study area perspective, we start on South Central at Keener. That's a study intersection. South Point at R.L. Stowe. South Point at the high school. And South Point at Bellwood, which is the proposed Belmont Middle School driveway. And then there were 4 intersections internal to the site. From an approved development perspective, there were 5 identified, and that includes River Mist, Belmont Town Square, McLean, Belmont Town Center, and Belmont Middle School. Okay. This slide is representing planned projects in the future from a transportation perspective. They are not funded. Okay? Because they are not funded, we did not include them as capacity adds in the traffic study. This is more for information to recognize that there are other improvements at least planned and funding being pursued. So of those would be the widening of Nixon, as Shelley mentioned, South Point Road widening, and there's strategies for that, R.L. Stowe, and of course Belmont Mount Holly connector over on the west that touches the western limits of this proposed site. So a lot of detail on this particular slide, but what to focus on is essentially, and I'll just walk up here and show you, the red arrow here at R.L. Stowe and South Point Road, as well as the extension of Nixon and the proposed lanes that's along Nixon at the site itself. So from the improvement perspective, the right turn lane on South Central, South Point there at R.L. Stowe to turn from heading south from South Point on the Nixon Road was warranted with 100-foot long storage requirement at that signal. And then the extension of Nixon Road, of course, would be continued west from its current terminus point, going through the site. 1 lane each direction with the exception of right turn lanes occurring at both of their driveway points, and they're at 75-foot long each. So just to give you an aerial photo perspective, this is that southbound right turn lane at South Point and RL Stowe. And then we've sort of overlaid where these driveways would be located and building the right turn lanes to turn into those. That concludes the presentation. Any questions?
Just to clarify, because it is difficult to see, are you saying that they would have to add a right turn lane coming down South Point Road to turn on to Nixon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that also
That would
is-
require them securing easements, in other words, that would not be, okay, wow.
Yes. And this is that same improvement that I referenced a minute ago. We put it back through the models at 164, and the planning board asked that question. And it did trip to meet city ordinance requirements for that being required, but even at 164.
But if they're coming out Nixon Road, we are not in a situation, because that's my concern, in other words, in the mornings with people going to work and the school traffic there, we're talking about adding more, and there's not a lane situation there. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So, yes, and so maybe I'll just elaborate on some of that for just a second. In this particular instance, there is added traffic associated with the site that's actually on that right turn lane. And so, there's so much traffic on South Point compared to the other roads, and RL Stowe in particular, and especially that left to right movement and vice versa, depending on the time of day. It provides a lot of benefit, and it provides enough benefit to offset the mitigation requirement, the impact essentially of the site. Now, there's still other improvements that need to be made at that intersection because of the existing conditions. So even without this site in hand, there definitely needs to be more improvements at that intersection. But to mitigate the added traffic at the site, that one lane pulls it back to the levels of service that are pre-site conditions.
Let me add on to what Martha was saying. I mean, the improvements seem to all be geared toward getting people into the development. You know, I take my son to South Point High School every morning, and trying to get out of there is a nightmare in the afternoon and the morning because of traffic, because of the cycling of the lights with the turn signals now. The time has been extended out dramatically, so cars waiting to get out Nixon Road are sitting there forever to make a right and left because the lights have to cycle through. I talked to the DOT about that, and they said, you know, they are probably maxed out on their efficiency, so there's nothing they can do. Now, whatever intersection improvements are made here aren't going to impact the cycling of those lights because that is what it is, the timing on them. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, you figured out how to get people in. How do we get people out at these crunch times? Because, you know, you're adding potentially 400 cars, 2 per household. You know, we've got 12 homes, I think, approved on Willarine and Julia, Andrew Lineberger and Preston Wilson. I think there's somewhere around 12 homes there. So you're up to about 200 homes, and you're boxed in. You can either go down Willarine to Julia, or you've got to sit in that stacking to get out. Now, you mentioned, you know, there's improvements coming from South Point Road and the Belmont Mount Holly connector, but the Belmont Mount Holly connector is way out. And I know that the MPO is looking at strategies to do South Point Road as far as presenting them in segments instead of the entire road. But that depends on money. So, I mean, does this at all address any way to get these people out? Have we got any options? Because it's going to be bad.
Well, so the one thing it does allow that DOT doesn't have the capability of now, they're constrained from a timing perspective now with the language that's at the intersection. So when this additional lane is added, then it's processing that southbound total approach more efficiently than it is today. So it's accommodating more of this traffic. So today, the through and the right are sharing that same lane, and therefore sharing the same amount of time, or taking more time from the signal to process that volume. When they're separated out into 2 lanes, they can process them differently and therefore more efficiently, needing less green time on this approach that can then be allocated to other approaches. Okay, so it's a time allocation element that results from adding this lane. It may go to this approach, or it may be split to these 2 because they are so much more heavy. as compared to this eastbound approach. But it results in adding time, is what it's doing. It's giving the intersection better capacity for time allocation of the green.
Any other questions? Steve?
Just have a couple more slides here. With regard to the architecture, the applicant has indicated they have not secured a builder yet, but has committed to a mix of materials consisting of brick, stone, fiber cement siding, vinyl only to use as trim. The elevations that are provided are the same elevations that were approved in the initial major development plan that did meet the guidelines of section 4.22 of the Land Development Code. The Planning Board approved this item at their March 21st public meeting. As in tonight's meeting, there's a lot of discussion about the traffic study and so forth. And at the end of the deliberations, the Planning Board did make a unanimous recommendation to approve as conditioned. They did find it was consistent with the Land Development Code, and therefore they're transmitting the recommendation to approve. So that we ask that you receive this report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Shelley. Anybody have any questions for Shelley?
Yeah, I do. We're not discussing the same situation as by right. In other words, they're asking for extra stuff that we do not have to offer them. Is that correct or not correct?
No, it's not. Okay, so this is still, the property zone general residential. It complies with all the regulations of the Land Development Code, whether it's 166 lots or 164 or 188 lots. It's still under 3 dwelling units to the acre. It meets all of, actually their zoning would actually allow up to 6 dwelling units to the acre, but they still go through the same process. So it meets all of the standards of the Land Development Code. What had changed in the code is our traffic analysis ordinance had been adopted in between the original, so they had to meet that as well. So this council would be approving the entire 188 lot residential subdivision with the conditions that have been modified to require the traffic improvements.
So
That
Shelley,
was not required before.
what you're asking us to do, this is a by rights thing. You're asking us to affirm that the rules and regulations of the zoning has been followed.
That's correct.
And you're telling me that that has been done.
Yes.
Now, the other thing was, because of the size, it triggered the traffic impact analysis, which was done. And you're also telling the council that the developer has agreed to all the improvements that were recommended in the TIA?
That's correct, yes, he has, and he's here to speak tonight, and yes.
So what you're asking us to do is to consider this and affirm that all the regulations have been met, not to affirm that we like the development or not, that we're affirming that everything has been met by code and by the standards of Land Development Code.
Yes, as
So we're to judge it on that basis and not the basis of whether we like 180 houses or 130 or whatever. Is that my understanding?
Yes,
You're asking me
my
to
understanding.
vote, you're asking me to affirm that everything has been followed as prescribed in Land Development Code and everything?
Yes, yes, sir, this is part of the process to go to the planning board and council. We show that what the plan is, we take in public comment, we show that they did a TIA, they meet all the standards, and they've even agreed to this list of conditions that is provided in your packet.
And say again, the turning lane that would have to be made, how long was that turning lane again on South Point Road?
It's 100 feet in length, the storage lane.
All right.
Yes, the storage length is 100 feet.
I attended the planning and zoning meeting, and they vetted this out pretty good. My takeaway from that meeting was, do you want 164 homes with no traffic improvements, or do you want 188 homes with traffic improvements? Which I think is a fair argument. I mean, I imagine if I went door to door back there, they'd just be upset about either option, but ultimately probably want the traffic improvements. And unless somebody has like an argument against that, if somebody does, I'd like to hear it. So if somebody disagrees with that thought process, not to oversimplify it, but I mean, it's an increase of 24 homes and you're going to get road improvements out of it. That's a hard trade-off, but planning and zoning seemed to think it was the best move forward. And so if anybody else has any thoughts on that, I'd like to hear it.
The road improvement will help a lot.
So then this requires a consistency statement?
No, sir, this is not a legislative act.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions for Shelley? All right, that being the case, we want to consider the adoption of a resolution.
Mayor, did you have anybody sign up to speak on this?
I don't think anybody signed up to speak at all. No, nobody. No. So that being the case, we'll consider the adoption of a resolution approving MDP 2019.03 Amberley, a request to modify a previously approved single-family residential neighborhood. Let's call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Motion.
Oh, we got a motion, I'm sorry. I have a motion.
I'll make the motion that they follow the procedures of land development code and the TIA study, so I'd recommend approval of it.
Okay, we've got a motion.
Or affirmation of it, I would say. I use the word affirmation.
Okay, that's a good word. Do I hear a second?
I'll say.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Yeah. So that's 3-1 in favor of 4, okay? All right, item 4 and 5 on the agenda are postponed till the May meeting. So we'll move on to item number 6. Consider the approval of a post-services agreement with Metric Metersys for support of the City of Belmont's AMI infrastructure and software.
Thank you, Mayor. So item 6 is an item that the Water and Sewer Committee reviewed at their most recent meeting. And as you'll recall, we have switched from manual read water meters to automated meter infrastructure, AMI water meters. And with that comes a tremendous amount of data on water usage. And we have now gone to a software that's called WaterSmart that allows for our customers to have almost up-to-date real-time data on their water consumption. And what we found is that our staff is able to utilize this technology, the software, but we're really just kind of using the most basic level of that software, and there are a lot of other functionalities that the software can offer that we just, frankly, our staff doesn't have time to spend delving into the software and making sure that it works with our finance software. And so we are asking that we have an agreement with Metersys, which is the consulting company we use on this whole project, to put together the AMI plan and find the best software for us, to have them work as sort of an intermediary between our staff and the technology company with WaterSmart. They would spend up to 30 hours a month assisting us with how to better utilize the software that we've already invested in and train our staff on how to do this. We talked in great detail at the Water and Sewer Committee about this. It's a $32,000 contract for 1 year of service. What we would hope is that we would have a staff person in the utility department that would be able to learn this technology and train the rest of the staff and would be our point person. Unfortunately, our current staff doesn't have the capacity and the time to do that right now. They're busy with the daily operations of the utility system. So One of the positions we'll be asking for in the utility side of the budget in next year is to have that technology person that could then learn from this MeterSys contract, and then we would no longer need to use MeterSys to help us with the technology side of it. They would spend the next year training us on how to better utilize this so that we can offer better services to our customers and our residents. So David Eisenhower has been working more closely than I have on this and can answer questions about this program and our request.
Thank you, Adrian. On behalf of Chuck, he's on a well-deserved vacation this week, so Chuck and I go over these programs quite often. But Adrian did mention the fact that we've been working with MeterSys, we're working with Laura Brown, and we've been working with Andy Honeycutt and Lisa. They have a wonderful staff of about 6 professionals in this organization. And what we're finding out, since we incorporated this meter program in 2016, I think it was a $2 million project, it's been extremely beneficial to the city of Belmont. It has eliminated a lot of things we used to do the old time way, and having to go out and reread meters and all the cut off meters and so forth. And now we have the technology that's available with MeterSys, a lot of technology that we're not utilizing. It's a younger society, and they're data driven, and they want instant information. And like Adrian says, we're not able to do that now. We do have one of the things that the Water and Sewer Committee asked for was that we hire someone that can do this and work with MeterSys. Fortunately, we have that person in house. And we'll be bringing that, as he said, we'll be bringing that to the council.
Good.
During the budget workshop, this individual is highly experienced, not only in technology, information technology, but he's also very familiar with this program with MeterSys. So we'll just have to do some in-house adjustments, and basically we end up having that person that be on staff full-time, and then down the road we just hire a regular building clerk to take the payments. So we're just asking for approval of this program so we can, get the functionality out of this software program that right now we're not being able to get.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for
I
David?
might add, the Water and Sewer Committee unanimously
Yeah, we approved it.
recommends that to the full
Yeah.
council.
Correct.
We did.
Well, David, let me ask you, right now, as I understand it, people can get their water usage, water bill, things like that off the portal. What are they going to do to enhance that? I guess I'm getting at, how much information do I need about my water other than how much it's costing me and how much I'm using?
That's a good question. If on pay, I think they sent us an amendment. They're looking at their service agreement. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's seven bullet points, if you will, on what this program will actually do. I don't have an electronic slide, but I think
Is that summary of services?
Yes.
Activities, deliverables?
So that answers your question on what all this program will do and how it functions, and some of the benefits that we're going to be able to get out, not only for our customers and for the data that they're going to be able to receive.
But don't we already get most of this? As far as...
They have to call in. They still call in. Have to talk to Sarah and have to talk to Sarah to get that information. And then if it gets more technical, they have to call Chuck, because Chuck has the system in his computer that he can actually pull it up and give them, but they're not able to pull that up online themselves to actually see that's part of this new program. They'll be able to do that.
David, it's my understanding too that the engineer in doing his water studies of future development and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's more data that's going to be
That it's just
available.
not customer driven, it's driven by determining the flow and all that kind of thing that we're required to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot more data available to the citizens as well. They still have to call City Hall. This will eliminate that. They'll be able to pull it up online. They'll be able to pull it up on their smartphones. They'll be able to see their water. If they want to watch how much water they're using, they'll be able to do that. And some people do want to do that.
This will be a benefit.
And as important is the data that it will give the staff so that we can make recommendations on improvements to our infrastructure.
Right.
So that we can see better utilization
Absolutely.
of the water and sewer system, so that we know where we're gonna have some maintenance issues and where we need to have some extensions and some upgrades to pump stations and booster pumps and things like that, where right now it's a very manual process. And so by investing in the software and technology, it'll help us do that analysis much more efficiently.
All right, so you're asking for a 1-year contract with these folks to get somebody trained and up and running?
Well, it's a 1-year contract to help the entire staff. And then separate from that would be, in the budget, we would ask for a position that would take this work forward so that we don't have to rely on a consultant.
Okay, so married to this is another position, full-time position?
Separate from this, it would be another position that would help coordinate all of our IT, but would take on the work so that we don't have to have an ongoing relationship with MeterSys to help us with
Right.
this.
Adrian, if we didn't have this system, how would we determine the 120 gallon flow per bedroom? As far as in our system, when we're talking about additional development, would be very difficult, wouldn't it?
So the way the process is working so far with Jerry's analysis is lots of manual reading of data from Elizabeth and Seth and Sarah, giving raw data to Jerry, who then analyzes it. Whereas, as I understand it, this WaterSmart, if we were fully able to utilize it, the WaterSmart system could provide that data to Jerry.
A lot better. All right. Anybody have any other questions for
I just have a
David?
comment. I think it's time we kind of look at that whole program and see what's worked and what hasn't worked. We hear a lot of subjective terminology from David and Chuck. I think if we could put some real numbers around it, just see, because I know we eliminated some positions originally out of this program. Looks like we're going to be adding another one back potentially. And so as we're making these decisions, I think it'd be helpful for us to really see what the results are. I don't know what they are, so I don't think that
Yeah,
see what's working and if it's paying for itself and all that. So.
We didn't actually eliminate positions, we just moved the meter readers and we moved them over, so we didn't capture any savings from personnel from the system.
Yeah, we transferred them into another department.
So
My
they're doing
question
high-level work.
would be, if you're paying $32,000 for this, if you're adding a position, by the time you add the benefits and all that to it, are you looking at more than $32,000?
Have to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
For
So,
the-
in other words, I don't
position.
know, how is that cost effective? In other words, why would you just not continue to have a contract with them as opposed to have a position?
And so, again, separating them out, so, and we'll get into this in the budget workshop, but right now, Michelle, our finance director, and I are the IT people for the city. And so in our spare time, we manage all the IT contracts and we make sure everything tries to work together. So we don't have a full-time IT coordinator. So we're sharing the various contracts and all the technology that we use. So we would like to have one person whose job it is not to go in and fix the computers, but to make sure that all the different pieces of software from the different vendors we have work together and they're all compatible, and that we've got sort of an overall plan for technology and implementation of technology. And so that's what this person would do, and one component would be this utility billing system in the water smart.
But are we putting the cart before the horse here? I mean, we're going to go ahead and approve a contract for a person or a job position that is yet to be approved.
Again, these are separate issues, and if you don't want to approve this agreement, then we will not use MeterSys for this, and we'll just kind of plug along as we can. And we can, so it's a matter of asking Chuck Flowers to stop doing a lot of what he's doing so that he can learn all the details of this technology system. And if not Chuck, then probably Michelle or David or Jerry or somebody on the utility side to stop doing what they're doing so they can learn this system. That to me is not the best way to do it.
When this system, Adrian, was first presented, I mean, it was, you know, it was going to do all of this and capture all of this information, and our folks in billing were going to have more time. And, you know, now it turns out that, you know, it's not exactly what I guess I thought it was, or the people are not able to process the information or whatever. I'm just, you know, I thought we were at an end with this, with what we had done, but I mean, I just don't want to get in a situation where, well, it can do this, and we need to add this, and it can do this, and we need to add this. I mean, at some point, there's got to be an end to the volume of information that you can have about water, I guess. From my perspective.
I wish that all of them could have been at the Water and Sewer Committee, because there was a more detailed explanation of this, and it gets away from customer service to management internally of the water system and answering questions. Like I mentioned a while ago, the old adage of 120-gallon flow for a bedroom, that if we were going to build 5 houses someplace, then can we provide that flow? And I think all this information is more of an engineering information than it is, as I told you before, my grandchildren are over at the house, and the Water Smart thinks then we use more water, so I told them they couldn't take a shower anymore. I mean, it's that quick, because it'll tell you if you use 85 gallons a day, and when it hits 100 and some gallons, it'll send you out an alert that you use more water. So I told them,
on the water and sewer.
Yeah, I said, y'all take a bath before you come
Mayor
over.
and Ron and Doug.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a lot more to this than just on the surface of this kind of thing, because Jerry is trying to work on something right now that has to go to multiple persons, where if this system was put in, then he'll be able to find it. So I think that, I think you're talking about two different things.
But Adrian, one of the things too, when we met with our representatives from the state, we were asked about data. So you're talking about something that would provide the data that Dana Bunkler had asked us
it'll
for. Is that
provide
correct?
it instantaneously, where he may have to go to David and go them, and then they say, well, let me go look here, let me go
That takes
find
a lot
it
of
here.
time
I
too,
think it's
yeah.
this. So I think it's,
You say we have somebody in-house, David, that can,
We have an individual that's extremely knowledgeable in IT services and technology.
yeah. Already on the payroll?
Well, he's
In a different capacity,
He's
but
in a
that's
different
a
capacity.
separate discussion
Okay.
than what we're looking at tonight.
So, but I think here you have two different issues. We're
Yes.
talking about software, you're talking about people.
Right.
And I think we need this software in order to answer those questions about, are our flows appropriate? And so I think that, the question here is the software. Then the question, of course, will be later, do we want a hard person? But I think we're at the Water and Sewer Committee, we were pretty much on target that this would provide that information, where before Jerry would just speculate. So I think, you have two different issues. I think one
Be a lot
issue
more
is
accurate.
software issue, the other issue
Lot
is
more
a
accurate.
personnel issue that comes into budget time.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I think if we're going to invest heavy in technology, we need to utilize it. And
I
it sounds
agree
like
with
we're not utilizing it right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And this puts us in a position to utilize it.
All right.
And I think it is separate from the position, because I have a lot more questions about that. But
Right, I
as
think
far
it's-
as this goes, because I share some of Richard's concerns, but as far as this goes, $38,000 to support a $2 million overhaul of our entire water systems, a drop in the bucket to support serious
So
technology.
it's two different issues. So just to get this resolved, I'll make a motion that we accept this.
Okay, got a motion to accept. I have a second.
I'll second.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
motion carries. Thank you, David. Next item on the agenda is item number 7. Consider the approval of a contract with HDR for architectural engineering and construction oversight services at the wastewater treatment plant for laboratory operations rehab.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll ask David to stay up here for this as well. He's got a long history on this project.
Yeah.
As you know, our water treatment plant is decades old, and it's, if not 100 years old, it's close to 100 years old. And it needs upgrades to comply with some state requirements. We've been sort of put on notice since the early to mid 1990s of some upgrades that we need to make to the water treatment plant. We've been able to get by telling the state that this is on our list and we'll get to it. And after about 20 years of telling them that we'll get to it, they've told us it's time for us to get to it. So we need to have some renovations to the office, the operations center, a meeting and break area, and to a restroom. And if feasible, we'd like to add a second restroom for the water treatment plant. And Chuck spent a lot of time trying to get engineering firms to even call him back, to give him a proposal on architectural and engineering and construction administration services for this renovation project. All those firms that we would want to work with are all busy because the economy is really good right now. And also, we're asking them to sort of design, adding on to an existing old building, but we're not real sure what's exactly underneath. When you start peeling back brick and wires from that long ago, there's some risk involved. Chuck was able to get a contract from HDR in the amount of $378,800 to do this project. And that is a maximum cost. Hopefully, that will come in under that amount if the building is in better condition than what they feared. They've sort of factored in their risk on that price. So that is not for construction. That is just for the design, engineering, and contract administration on that.
Aiden's correct. This has been on our book since 1993. It first came to me when I was put in as Public Works Director in 2000. And then, of course, Chuck and I got involved in it, but long story, the state inspector would come in and do the inspection of the plant. And every year he kept saying, you got to get these people out of this lab. They can't be in the lab with food or whatever. So if you've been to the water plant, we've got 12 employees. Right now we have one bathroom. It's not ADA compliant. It's very, very old. Like Adrian said, it's built 29. 12 employees. Our break room is an old hopper room next to the elevator. It's probably less than 200 square feet to handle those 12 employees. So the first inspector, state inspector, Terry Gross, came to Chuck and I for 7 or 8 years. He finally retired. We got a new inspector that came in, and he's been very patient with us. This is one of the first projects that we ever listed on our city's CIP project, probably number 1 for Chuck. And so here we are in 2019. So 2 years ago, they finally said, we're tired of your promises. We want to see something. We want to see something. So this is something that they're looking for.
Okay. Any questions for David?
Overall, David, I mean, this brings us into compliance. Have we still got issues out there that we're going to have to look at?
It'll certainly take care of the issue. That's every year we get awards for doing exceptionally good work, producing water. The only downfall we've ever had with the state, Richard, has been this right here. That get our employees out of the lab. They can't be in there. That's a lab. It's not a break room. And we need to have restrooms for them. They need to have a place to go. So the bottom line is just to get into compliance with the state, because it's a water plant. And we produce water for the general health of our public. And we don't need to be doing what we're doing now.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll motion.
You got a motion?
I'll second it.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, very good. Thank you, David. Item number 8. Consider the acceptance of a proposal for constructing a satellite water and sewer equipment and supplies facility on city property located on Henry Chapel Road.
Thank you, Mayor and David. This is another item that's been on the CIP for several years on the water and sewer side of the ledger. As you know, our city has been growing and growing on the south end of the city. And so our water and sewer staff are stationed at Public Works and at the 2 plants. And when we have any sort of utility-related issues, water breaks, sewer issues on the south side of town, we've got to haul our people and equipment from up here all the way down there. And depending on the time of day, that can be a long trip. And so what we've been asking internally, and finally have a proposal for you, is to have sort of a substation on the utility side about halfway down the peninsula, so that we can have better response time to any sort of water or sewer issues in McLean or Reflection Point or Morgan's Branch or any of our customers or infrastructure down the southern half of town. This is another project that Chuck was trying his best to get contractors to call him back on, and finally got one bid in, and he tried to get two more. I think we finally got two bids, and the other contractors that he talked to just wouldn't even respond. Said, I'm not even going to give you a price on it. But we do have a proposal. The low bidder is from Bauer Trowse Construction, Preston Wilson, local builder, and it's $394,000, and that is for site grading on the properties that the city already owns on Henry Chapel Road that we initially were going to put our south water tank on, but now that we're going to put that on the Plant Allen campus. So this is the plan. Our plan for that property on Henry Chapel Road would be for this utility substation. So this cost is for the site grading, the engineering, gravel driveway, and the 40x40 building, as well as the screening and landscaping around the material storage area on that property. So this also went to the Water and Sewer Committee, and we had a long discussion about it, because this is, if you just look at the price per square foot, it's very expensive, but it's more than just the building. The site work is half the cost of this. You'll see that the other bid that we received was $757,000.
Yeah.
So
it's a deal, huh?
So this, by comparison, this is certainly a better deal. But we did have a lot of discussion about this at the Water and Sewer Committee, and the committee did unanimously recommend approval of this. And staff recommends that that you accept the low bid from Bauer Trowse, $394,000.
Well, Agent Craig, we did try to get other bids. We called Penix. First thing they asked us, how many square feet you talking about? We tell them 1,600. We just don't have time to even come out to bid on it. We called Piedmont Trade Services, the same thing. The highest bid we have that they even talked about was $700,000. Quite honestly, that's a courtesy bid, and that's from the company that's building our city municipality complex right now. They were kind enough to go out there and look at it. Again, they were very honest and said, we really don't have the time and the staff right now to be working on a 1,600 square foot building.
Yeah.
But they did quote us. But then they looked at the site grading. The grading was the biggest issue. So the bid was high, and Preston and his group went out there and looked at it, Mel and all of them, and they gave us a good price. But we own the land. We've owned the land for many years. It was the original site from the water tower that was going to put there. This is before Reflection Point even came in. So we got a good deal on the land. There was some question from the Water and Sewer Committee, particularly Mr. Gadd. Obviously, he ran the numbers on that, and it kind of floored him. But I think there's one question that was asked: is this the ideal location? We would ideally know. We would love to be on the very, very end of the peninsula, because that's where all the growth is going on. But it gets us very close. It gets us on this side of the canal.
And we have to buy the land too.
But to try to find land down there to put a satellite branch for public works, construction type equipment, if you will, I'm sure we would never be able to afford that land.
Yeah.
So we got owning the land. It's a good place for us. It'll keep our equipment there, and we don't have to mobilize as often from here. It'll already be there. And also keep in mind we have employees, quite a few employees that are down there now working every day. As bad as it sounds, they still have to come back to here to use the restroom or whatever. This right here will eliminate that. We'll at least have a bathroom in there for the employees to utilize, as well as having some equipment and some material on hand.
Better not be driving the whole way back up here.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Yeah.
Hopefully God that's not happening.
Yeah. So we need a satellite facility there.
Is this?
For the safety of the people on the peninsula down there, that's
But
important.
yeah, it's to utilize time. We're already there, and to try to get the equipment down there in the mornings, it's almost impossible. And any time after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it becomes impossible again. So this will save us a great deal of time.
So our guys can use the restroom at Jim's or Harris Teeter or somewhere like that. But you'll see sometimes they get into sewer issue or water issue, and
Yeah.
Harris Teeter probably wouldn't want them
A
coming
little
in.
bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Does 1,600 square feet make sense in 5 years from now?
It would be more. The way the economy's going.
Are you gonna set it up where you can add on to it?
Yes, sir. Well, no, I take that back. No, sir. We only have a little over an acre. I believe it's a little over an acre, so like, so it's not a great deal of expansion there. Not a great deal of expansion.
Let me ask you a question, Adrian. Have you reviewed this and felt like that this bid is reasonable? Because I know it's more than the building, it's like automatic fencing, gates, buffering, and all this kind of stuff. So when you reviewed it, do you feel like that this is an appropriate bid for that amount of work?
Yes, sir.
And as far as using the bathroom, we're not building this just so they can go to the bathroom.
No, it's considered, it's.
Well, you know, when you said that, I
But
thought,
we need
well,
to
there's a porta john down there.
Trailer, we'll give them a fancy trailer.
And Bauer Trust does good work too.
But there was a question about why we putting the restroom in there,
Oh.
and that was the answer to that question that we had.
Is this primarily, you're gonna use this as a staging area, or will it be staffed at all, or is it just?
No, it's staging area,
Staging.
only. No staff will be there.
Let me ask you a secondary question, because I can't recall, the Garden Parkway, last week was kept on the CTP, so it's in the long-range plan. And I'll be honest with you, I can't remember if it goes down Henry Chapel or if it goes down Boat Club, but it does have a 1,500-foot right-of-way on either side. So the road is flexible, 1,500 feet either side. Does that, Adrian, does that impact this at all? Should they build eventually?
So if the Garden Parkway were to be built, it would be south.
Okay.
I believe it comes in a little bit north of this, toward Boat Club, and then over toward Tucker.
So should they take the full 1,500-foot swing, it won't impact us?
Best I can tell, that's correct.
Wouldn't they have to pay for it, anything?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right, thank you, David.
They being us.
Any other questions for David? All right, do we have a motion?
Yeah, it's all,
I'll make the motion, we accept it.
Got a motion to accept, got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Next, we have the reports.
Thank you, Mayor. The next items are reports from the various committees of council or your advisory board. You've got the Tourism Authority report, Environmental Sustainability Board report, the Main Street Advisory Board, a DBDA report, Parks and Recreation Advisory report, Planning Board report, and Water and Sewer Committee reports. None of those need action, that's just for your information so that you can keep up with what those committees are doing. And the final report is the manager's report. Just a couple of announcements on upcoming events. This Friday is the grand opening of Techworks, which is located on Irvin Street in the same building as Riverman Brewing, beside the post office. This has been under construction for a long time. It's been a great partnership between the city and the county and the state and a lot of folks. So that grand opening is Friday, April 5th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's open to the public, so you're all welcome to join us. And then this Saturday, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got City Pride Day with Keep Belmont Beautiful at the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park at 9 a.m. And then that is followed by our Arbor Day celebration, where we partner with the town of Cramerton, also at the River Park Saturday, and that is from noon to 3 p.m. And then Elements of Empowerment is having the jazz concert, a periodic jazz concert that will be at Belmont Abbey on Sunday, April 7th at 4. Then our Easter egg hunt is Saturday, April the 20th. We'll do it at Stowe Park at noon and Lincoln Park at 2 p.m. Then our annual Garibaldi Festival is Saturday, April the 27th at Stowe Park. That's from 11 a.m.
Okay.
On here till 1 p.m. That's not right. It begins at 11. So those are events coming up. So we're gearing up our event season. And then a couple meetings that we need to schedule. The Transportation Committee, which is Councilman Turner and Councilman Fogle and Mayor Pro Tem Stowe, like to get together. I think we met in February, so we need to meet again. Our NPO has met, so to get a report on that and update on some of the projects going around. So I'll ask Jamie to coordinate with you on when we can meet sometime in April. Then we need to have a second budget workshop preferably in late April, perhaps Monday, April the 29th.
29th, yeah.
If y'all are available. That's the last Monday of April.
Should be good.
Who wants to set a meeting for the Transportation Committee for the end of the month? Got a date in mind?
Is the 29th good for the budget workshop?
29th's good for the budget for me, yeah.
It looks good.
We could add we could do the Transportation Committee meeting at like 4 o'clock and then do the budget workshop at 5.
Can you do that?
Does that work for y'all at 4?
That'd be good.
Mark, would be better.
I'll have to check about the 4 o'clock part, but
For the budget?
go ahead and
For
set it.
the Transportation Committee.
Go ahead
we'll
and
do
set
budget
it,
workshop at 5.
if something happens, I'll let you know.
Okay.
And then just a couple quick updates. I'm sure you've heard by now, but Mugshots has moved its location from beside Garibaldi Realty into the station building, the old train depot.
Yeah.
And you'll recall, Mugshots was leasing the outdoor patio area from the city that we have with our parking lot. They have requested to get out of that lease, and since they're no longer located there, and David and Wendy Hosseller have requested to take that lease on. So it'd actually be a new lease agreement. So
Yeah.
there's a 30-day notice period on that. So if you're in general agreement that we could entertain a lease agreement with the Hostettlers for that property.
Sure.
They've got
Yeah,
a
no
tenant
problem
in
with that.
mind for the old Mugshot space that would like to use that
Yeah.
outdoor area. So we can schedule that public hearing at the May 6th meeting. And then we asked you about the League of Municipalities annual conference, their City Vision Conference. That will be in Hickory, May 14th through the 16th. If you're interested in going to that, please see Jamie Campbell to get you registered.
May 14th through the 16th?
Yes, sir, May 14th through 16th in Hickory.
Well, what town is it going to be in?
Hickory.
Hickory, okay.
So if you can look at your calendars, let her know this week so we can give an early registration deadline.
Yeah, and you want to go to, you'll have to coordinate with me because I have to select certain things you want to go to over the 3-day period. So if you could come in and into my office and we'll register you, that'd be easy.
That's all I have, Mayor.
I'd like to go to that. All right, next item on the agenda is other business. We'll start out with Ron this time. Nothing, Ron? All right. Martha?
I have several items. Shelley, at the next meeting, would you give us an update on the Essex Homes situation at McLean? And also, would you update us with regard to Starbucks, since they did not comply with 2 parts of what they were supposed to do, both the way the drive-through was set up and the plantings involved? So if you'd let us know about that in May. A couple of things, mostly for the voters in the audience. Ron Folk has always said you need to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. This council has attempted to do that. We are being vilified in the social media, and it's not appropriate. We're being accused of lining our pockets. We're also being accused of rubber stamping things, and it's certainly not appropriate. I wanted to make sure we get in the minutes some of the things that we have done. We have adhered or have set up a policy about social media that is adhered to by most of the council, but there's still slanted, skewed, and incorrect information being put out there. Our team has worked with DOT to try to make sure that they don't mess up the boulevard, they don't mess up the exit 26 ramp, and also the Michigan lefts that you're talking about. Those 3 parts of DOT did not talk. Unless we worked with them, we would have a big mess coming out here, and we're trying to fix that. If it weren't for this council negotiating with the commissioners, we would have no middle school groundbreaking, because they totally shut down the process. So if we had not intervened, we would not be looking at that. So we're doing a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't talk about. One of the other parts of this is the light rail. If we had not gone a year ago and been rudely treated, and Charlotte had not gone back again and participated in that study, we would not be looking at light rail coming to Belmont. So a lot of things we've done that sometimes we don't talk about. With regard to the school, one of the things Ron said, this county was holding our students hostage, and we did not find that appropriate. So we intervened and took care of that situation. The last part of this is that we take an oath to uphold state law. Even though I personally, and I'm sure some of the council people would like to declare a moratorium, we think there's plenty of growth that's here. We cannot do that. All right, so if we're voting no on a by right situation like Royals River or the project tonight, we're subjecting the city to possible lawsuits, which we would not be able to win. If we want to get the law changed, and maybe some of us do, then we need to go to Raleigh to do that. So when people are vilifying us in the social media part of it, they're not seeing this whole picture. We have a very competent staff. They spend a lot of time with the project. The Morris project that did not come before you tonight, that will be considered in May. Our staff has been working on that over a year. So if we do approve it, it's certainly not a rubber stamp situation. If we don't approve it, there's certain reasons we would look at. But please make sure, because you guys are here, that you help publish that information, because it is really not appropriate for us to get vilified. But I'm not going to take my time. My blood pressure would go up. My husband looks at it and gives me an editorial version of it. But we work way too hard and spend way too many hours trying to do good for this city for us to have this kind of situation occurring. And personally, it doesn't bother me. I teach school. I have kids that over the years have said really awful things to me. But it certainly is not appropriate. And as adults, if you would help spread the good part of what we do, I would certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Martha. I'd like to add to what Martha said right there, too. Everybody that serves on this council loves the city of Belmont. Our staff loves the city of Belmont. It's a great place to live, work. One of the friendliest towns I've ever been involved with, bar none. And I don't get on social media either. I think it's sometimes too much information sometimes is a problem. And I just rather stay away from that. And we come to meetings, discuss things intelligently in our meetings, and I think we've got the brain trust to make good decisions. Planning board does a great job. I think the city council does a great job. But to get stuff out there and stuff, it's a lot of trouble. It's really, I hear things that I know nothing about, and erroneous information that I hear, fake things, and it's terrible when you hear stuff like that. So where'd you hear that from? You know, so that's all I've got to say. I just be careful doing that. All right, Richard?
I don't have anything.
Ryan?
I didn't, but if we're gonna redo that lease with that parking lot, then we should put a public parking sign on the back part, so people go to Stowe Park there to that parking lot thing. And then, to echo your concerns, I'll just keep it simple. When there's misinformation out there, it makes it harder for us to talk about the facts. It's okay to disagree about the facts, but when it's misinformation, we don't even get to do that.
Yeah.
And that concerns me as somebody sitting up here. You don't even know how I feel about certain things if we don't get to sit down and actually talk about the actual item at hand. If we're talking about things that are impossible or illegal, it makes it complicated. And so I just encourage everybody to get educated on the issues and watch out for misinformation. It's a serious issue in Belmont right now. I think it's a disservice to all of you. I feel bad. I think we lack leadership up here for that, and I think we've created a very divided community, which is completely unnecessary.
Yeah. I've even heard that we've been on the pad. And I won't take a penny from anybody. I just don't do it. So.
That's all for me. You got minutes?
Huh?
Yes, if you'll pass down the closed session minutes, please.
Yeah. Get them out of here. Hold on. All right.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Okay.
Jamie, was that
A motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Go get it.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.